Hello, all, and welcome to this week's episode of Serial Killer Looks. Today, we will be spotlighting one of the most infamous serial killers. It's not very well known, but he absolutely has made his claim to fame as a United States serial killer. Our spotlight this week will be Samuel Little. Now, Samuel Little, he was actually born on June 7th in 1940. He was born to a prostitute mother in Reynolds, Georgia. Now, soon after his birth, his family actually moved to a small place in Ohio called Lorain, Ohio, where he was brought up mainly by his grandmother. He attended a high school called Hawthorne Junior High School, where he had a multitude of problems with discipline and achievement. By his own account, he began having sexual fantasies about strangling women as a child, starting with his kindergarten teacher. When she used to touch her neck, he would fantasize about strangling her. As a teenager, he collected true crime magazines depicting women being choked. It wasn't until 1956, after being convicted of breaking and entering into a property in Omaha, Nebraska, Little was held in an institution for juvenile offenders. Little moved to Florida and lived with his mother in his late 20s, working at various times as a cemetery worker and an ambulance attendant. He said he then began traveling more widely and had more run-ins with the law, being arrested in 8 states for crimes that ranged from driving under the influence, fraud, shoplifting, solicitation, armed robbery, aggravated assault, and even rape. Little claimed that he took up boxing during his stints in prison, referring to himself as a former prize fighter. In 1961, Little was sentenced to 3 years in prison for breaking into a furniture store in Lorain, Ohio. He was released in 1964. But by 1975, he had been arrested 26 times in 11 different states for a multitude of different crimes. In 1982, Little was arrested in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and charged with the murder of 22-year-old Melinda Rose LaPree, who had gone missing in September of that year. However, a grand jury declined to indict him for her murder. However, while under investigation, Little was extradited to Florida and tried for the murder of 26-year-old Patricia Ann Mount, whose body was found in September of 1982. Prosecution witnesses identified Little in court as a person who spent time with Mount on the night before her disappearance. Due to mistrust of witness testimonies, Little was acquitted in January of 1984. Little then moved to California, where he stayed in the vicinity of San Diego. In October 1984, he was arrested for kidnapping, beating, and strangling 22-year-old Lori Barros, who survived. 1 month later, he was found by police in the back seat of his car with an unconscious woman, also beaten and strangled, in the same location as the attempted murder of Barros. Little served 2.5 years in prison for both crimes. Upon his release in February 1987, he immediately moved to Los Angeles and committed at least 10 additional murders. Little was arrested on September 5, 2012 at a homeless shelter in Louisville, Kentucky, and extradited to California to face a narcotics charge, after which authorities used DNA testing to establish that he was in fact involved in the murders of Carol Eileen Elford, killed July 13, 1987, Guadalupe Duarte Apodaca, killed September 3, 1987, and Audrey Nelson Everett, killed August 14th, 1989. All 3 women were killed and later found in the streets of Los Angeles. He was extradited to Los Angeles, where he was charged on January 7th, 2013. A few months later, the police said that Little was being investigated for involvement in 3 dozen murders committed in the 1980s, which until then had been undisclosed. In connection with the new circumstances in Mississippi, the LaPree murder case was reopened. In total, Little was tested for involvement in 93 murders of women committed in many states across the entire United States. Now, Little was convicted in 2012 of the murders of those 3 women in California between 1987 and 1989. He was also convicted in 2018 of the murder of 1 woman in Texas from a murder in 1994. He claimed to have killed as many as 93 women, and investigators have linked him to over 60 murders. The FBI has confirmed Little's involvement in at least 60 murders, the largest number of proven cases for any serial killer in all of United States history. He allegedly murdered women across 19 states over the course of 35 years, ending around 2005. The number of murders he's confessed to, if confirmed, would make him the most prolific serial killer in the history of the United States, according to Ector County, Texas District Attorney Bobby Bland. Let us sort through some of these later confessions. On November 9th, 2018, Little confessed to the 1996 fatal strangulation of Melissa Thomas. On November 13th, 2018, Little was charged with the 1994 murder of Denise Christie Brothers in Odessa, Texas, after having confessed to the crime to a Texas Ranger in May 2018. Little pleaded guilty to the murder of brothers on December 13th and received another life sentence. The Ector County, Texas District Attorney and Wise County, Texas Sheriff Office announced on November 13th that Little had confessed to dozens of murders and may have committed more than 90 across 14 states between 1970 and 2005. On November 15, 2018, the Russell County, Alabama District Attorney announced that Little had earlier that month confessed to the 1979 murder of 23-year-old Brenda Alexander, whose body was found in Phoenix City, Alabama. On November 16, 2018, Macon, Georgia sheriffs announced that Little had credibly confessed to the 1977 strangling murder of an unidentified woman and the 1982 strangling murder of 18-year-old Virginia Smith. In the fall of 2018, Little confessed to the 1982 murder of a 55-year-old Dorothy Richards and the 1996 murder of 40-year-old Daisy McGuire, both of their bodies found in Houma, Louisiana. On November 19, 2018, Harrison County, Mississippi Sheriff Troy Peterson said that Little had confessed to strangling 36-year-old Julia Critchfield in the Gulfport area in 1978 and dumping her body off of a cliff. And on November 20th, 2018, Lee County, Mississippi law enforcement officials announced that Little had admitted to killing 46-year-old Nancy Carol Stevens in Tupelo, Mississippi in 2005, and that case would be presented to a grand jury in January 2019. On November 21st, 2018, Richland County, South Carolina authorities announced that Little had confessed to murdering 19-year-old Evelyn Weston, whose body was found near Fort Jackson, South Carolina in 1978. Little confessed to having killed 20-year-old Rosie Hill in Marion County, Florida in 1982. On November 27, 2018, the Federal Bureau of Investigation announced that a violent criminal apprehension program team had confirmed 34 of Little's confessions and was working to match the remainder of Little's confessions to known murders and suspicious deaths. Little began making the confessions in exchange for a transfer out of the Los Angeles County prison in which he was being held. One included his confession to a previous cold case homicide in Prince George's County, Maryland. In December 2018, Little was indicted for strangling Linda Sue Boards, age 23, to death in May 1981. In Warren County, Kentucky, her body was found on May 15, 1981, near U.S. Route 68. One of Little's victims was identified in December 2018 as Martha Cunningham of Knox County, Tennessee, who was 34 years old when Little murdered her in 1975. Now, stop me if it seems as if I'm rambling, but geez, Little has a unending list of victims that he was just terrorizing throughout this time. On May 31st, 2019, an extremely difficult to pronounce county in Ohio, prosecutors announced indictments with 4 counts of aggravated murder and 6 counts of kidnapping that accuse Little of killing Mary Jo Payton in 1984 and Rose Evans in 1991 in Cleveland. Both victims were strangled and dumped. The body of Rose Evans, 32, was found on August 24, 1991, in a vacant lot on East 39th Street. She left her hometown of Binghamton, New York, when she was 17 years old. Evans had been strangled, according to the coroner, Elizabeth K. Balraj. As for Payton, an anthropologist had to create a model of what she looked like, but she remained unidentified until 1992 when Cleveland put her thumbprint in an FBI database and got a match. Little picked up Payton at a bar near East 105th and Euclid Avenues. He described her as short, plump woman in her 20s with brown hair. Little confessed to killing another Cleveland woman in 1977 or 1978. The woman murdered in 1977 or 1978 was found on March 18, 1983, in Willoughby Hills, Ohio, according to the National Missing and Identified Persons System. She was likely black and somewhere between 17 and 35 years old. The woman's body had been dumped down a grassy slope near a fence in a wooded area just off of Interstate 271. When her body was found by a man walking his dog, only her skeleton, some clothing, and jewelry remained. Little confessed to killing 1 woman in Akron, Ohio, 2 in Cincinnati. One of the bodies was dumped outside of Columbus, Ohio, and 1 woman he met in Columbus was disposed of in Kentucky. Of the 2 women Little murdered in Cincinnati, one was identified as Ann Stewart, 33. whose body was dumped in Grove City, Ohio. Stewart was last seen on October 6, 1981, getting out of a cab at General Hospital to see her sister in the hospital. He killed the other woman between 1980 and 1999. The Jane Doe was anywhere between the ages of 15 and 50, as the details of her age and the date of her murder were very unclear. She was black, slender, wore glasses, and lived in the over-the-Rhine neighborhood of Cincinnati with a heavier female Hispanic. Little left her beside a cigarette billboard in Ohio. On June 7, 2019, Little was indicted in Hamilton County, Ohio, for murdering the two women killed in Cincinnati. Little had drawn portraits of many women he killed. These portraits were released by the FBI in hopes of someone identifying these women. At least one portrait solved a cold case in Akron, Ohio. In November of 2020, Little confessed to 2 Florida murders, for one of which another man had been wrongfully convicted. On December 30th, 2020, Little finally died from complications of heart disease and diabetes. The 2 features of this makeup look were the PUR Festival Eyeshadow Palette and the Lucious Eyeshadow Primer. For more serial killer looks, highlighting a variety of different serial killers and a few nice new makeup looks, like, share, and follow for next week's serial killer look.